رب رحيم مشفق.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah barakatuh. Well, we are very happy to be at your home again and be with you, and we are happy to be here as well in the audience with all of you. And inshallah, we are going to continue with our series, and we are looking at Dawah Ilallah. And in this series, we are looking at how to be effective da'is, and also how to change ourselves. There are things that we need to apply to ourselves before going out and talking to other people. That doesn't mean you have to be perfect to become a da'i. It means that you are continuously readdressing issues that you have in your life. So it's a continuous process. You're never going to be good enough to do dawah anyway. You just do dawah along the way, and as you go along, you change the different issues with yourself. It was on one of the courses that I did with an institution, a well-known institution, and they had a dawah course. And one of the speakers, he said that when you do dawah, two things take place. When you do dawah, you not only give the message to other people, but you give message to yourself as well, because you feel like a hypocrite if you're not applying those things that you're asking other people to do in your own life. And he said it's like washing clothes with your hands. Imagine you're washing clothes, the washing machine's not working, no laundromat to go send your clothes to, and so you're washing your shirt. You want to wear your favorite shirt, you're washing it. What happens? Well, first of all, your shirt gets cleaned, and secondly, you get very, very clean hands. Your intention was not to get clean hands. Your intention was to have a clean shirt. But the byproduct of doing it is getting clean hands. In the same way, when you do dawah, not only does someone else get benefit from it, but at the same time, inshallah, you will change and you become cleaner by it. So it's a twofold issue. Let's continue with our book that we are going through on Dawah Ilallah and read the next passage, and then we'll comment on it, inshallah.
The Prophet ﷺ was also ordered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to magnify Allah above all. Arise and warn and magnify thy Lord. Surah 74, verse 2 and 3.
The mission of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was to be a lamp and a guide to the people, as we looked at last week. And today we're looking at the purpose of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was to magnify Allah. Now, many times when we talk about words or terms, we don't know, we just use them as a sweeping statement. You know, like Christians will often say, like, I feel Jesus in my heart. What does that mean? What does that mean? That he lives there, there's a little shrine there, or that it's an emotional thing? What does that mean? I often ask Christians when they say, you know, I can feel the Holy Spirit. I say, well, what does he feel like? You know, we often make statements that we don't explain. So when we look at this word magnify, what do you understand by the word magnify? If I had to ask you, any of you, what does the word, when you hear this narrated in chapter 74, where it says magnify, when he speaks, arise and warn and magnify thy Lord. When we hear the word magnify, often we get this spiritual understanding that perhaps the Christian will see it as like something very, you know, like magnify the Lord. It's very, doesn't have much meaning to it. It's just a term that is used loosely without understanding what that means. What does the word magnify mean? We said that it means to enlighten, to look at, to observe, to concentrate on. So when we have a look at terms, we must be very cautious that we don't just use them as sweeping statements. You know, often people will say, like we said with Christianity or in Hinduism or in Buddhism, they use these statements that they can't actually explain. When we're explaining, doing dawah to someone, calling them to Allah, we need to explain these concepts to them. So when we make a statement, we must be able to justify what we are saying. So we are saying that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he was ordered by Allah to magnify Allah above all. What does that mean? To concentrate on him above all else. The most important, like a magnifying glass. To zone in. Because this is why we see in the beginning of Islam that Tawheed was emphasized so importantly. We have to get that concept right. If we do not explain Tawheed correctly to the new person or the person that we're inviting, it will create so many problems later. They call them learning gaps in school or university. You know, somebody who's continuously off from school, maybe they're sickly children, and then by the time they get to grade 12, they have trouble because that's when they find all the learning gaps that they missed. And then there's problems, their marks start falling. So they have to patch up the learning gaps. So if you don't get Tawheed correct in the beginning and you don't give the message of Dawah Ilallah correctly in the beginning, you create learning gaps later in the spiritual life of a Muslim. And so this is why we find the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was given the instructions of Allah to magnify. Some people will look at it and understand it as like, you know, bowing down and worship and have like some type of, you know, got no freedom of thought, I can't think. Many atheists will say, why does God need to be praised? Your God is insecure if he needs to be praised and worshipped the whole time. This shows a God of insecurity. Because they're looking at it from a human understanding. They're looking at it from a human perspective. And they're looking at it in the way we would understand it. But what we understand from this text is that he's telling the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to focus the attention of the people on understanding Tawheed, on understanding who he is, giving the right concept, who I am. Because if they don't have the right concept, that's when the people will go into error. And so when we as da'is get that understanding right in our head, it's success in the da'wah we do, inshallah. Because we are taking the right concept forward. We don't want to be vague. We must take our time, as we'll see in the series. We need to take our time with da'wah. We don't want to rush into things. We want to take it one step at a time. Let's move on to the next point now.
The Quran was also revealed for the same purpose as well as to warn about the day of judgment. And thus, we have revealed to you a Quran in Arabic, that you may warn the mother of towns and all around it, and warn of the day of assembly, of which there is no doubt. Surah 42, verse 7.
So, like we spoke about before, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was sent as a warner. But the Quran has been given to us as a book that will warn people of what will happen in the future. Now, many terminologies that we use sometimes can be terminologies that will scare or fear people. People get scared of when they hear a word. Like if we say to them, the day of judgment, what happens? People get very scared of that word. Or when we say, you will be called to answer for all you did, they get very terrified of it. And this is a technique or a tactic that you often see Christians using. You know, they will say, God loves you, but you're going to burn in hell forever. And it's almost like they're using fear tactics to get people to convert. Well, if love's not going to work, we're going to use fear. But we find that Islam is very, very balanced. Islam is very simple. The call is there. Yes, there are consequences if you don't do it, but it's your choice. It's left in your. We're not trying to scare you into becoming a Muslim. We're not using terror tactics to become a Muslim. So when we give the message of Islam, we give the message of Tawheed because it's a message of hope. But there's a warning that goes to it, but it's balanced. It is not used as a fear tactic. I cannot remember coming across somebody who became a Muslim out of fear. They became Muslims because they realized, wow, this makes sense. Wow, this is understanding of who Allah is. And it was the beauty of Islam that attracted them, not the fear. You see, even though this verse that we read talks about a day of assembly, see how nicely it's put. The day of gathering, the day of accounting, the day when the books will be opened, the day of assembly, not a day when you are going to be cursed and suffering, even though there are verses that talk about a day of judgment. But in this beautiful way that it's been put is a day of a gathering, a day of assembly, a day of accounting. You know, once a year, if you have a business, they have an auditors. You know those guys you don't want in your business? They come and take 3-4 days in your business and they do auditing of every book, and you walk around like walking past their desk to see if they found anything wrong. And the minute you see one of the accountants doing this, you go, oh no, they found a problem. You know, you get scared, get worried. But it should be a day of celebration. If you did your books correctly, it's a day of celebration. You're going to get tax returns. Things are going to be in your favor. If you did things wrong, of course you need to worry. So it's a day of accounting. It's a day of assembly. So when we talk to our non-Muslim friends, use terminologies that are less imposing. Talk to them in ways where we see the wisdom of the Quran, how it spoke with wisdom. that there will be a time that people need to be warned of what's going to happen, about a day of accounting, a day of reckoning, a day of assembly, and which there is no doubt that it will happen. So you have to explain to people, just by wishing that there's not going to be a day of assembly or a day of accounting doesn't mean there's not going to be one. It's going to be there, whether you like it or not. Like we spoke the other day about a pen dropping on the table, you can call it anything you want. It's still gravity. Whatever term you want to call it, it's still gravity. So this is something that we need to explain to our friends when we are doing dawah to them. Even when you're talking to Muslims, many Muslims say, you know, I just found there's too many no's in Islam. And as a Muslim, I just rather just stay away because it's just too many no, you can't. There's more do's than don'ts in Islam, but we concentrate only on the negatives. We never get a chance to enjoy the things that are permissible. You must remember we're all growing at a different stage, so we must concentrate on the deeds that we need to change in ourselves before passing too much judgment on somebody else. Rather address the most important issues that need to be resolved in your life first. The lesser things, let them be resolved later. So we have to do triage. You know what triage is? Triage is when someone comes into a theater, maybe 5 people in an accident. You don't help the guy with a sprained ankle when there's somebody with half his liver sticking out. You deal with the guy with half the liver sticking out. You treat the most important thing first. The same with our lives, helping with people that you're dealing with. They might have 50 things, but deal with the most important, which is tawheed. Forget about the fact that they're smoking and all that. They'll get that later. The most important is that they understand who Allah is first. And after that, you can deal with the lesser things or lesser sins that they have in their life. Let's take a break. When we get back from the break, we'll continue, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back from the break. We are continuing with our talk on Dawah Ilallah and how the Prophet Muhammad was sent as a warner to the people, and also how this verse that we have looked at in ayah 7 of chapter 43, it speaks about a day of assembly, that he was sent to warn the people that there will be a day of accounting, a day of reckoning. And so we as da'is, when we speak to people, when we go out and give the message of Islam, we must give the message of Tawheed. And when we speak to people, we must warn them, of course, that there is going to be a day of accounting, but the way we must speak about it is in a way that will be understandable to them. We must be careful of using terms that we don't understand. So put it in terminologies that they understand. If you're talking to a Christian, he is probably a Christian because the only reason he's a Christian is not because he loves Jesus, not because he's guaranteed a ticket to heaven, but he's a Christian, most of them, is because they're afraid of the eternal fire that they've been threatened throughout their document, where we give the simple message of the love of Islam. Yes, there is that section to Islam, but the most important is we're offering hope to people. We're offering the message of hope. So we're not concentrating on only the negatives, we are concentrating on the positives of Islam. So when you give dawah, this is what we want to focus on. Let's go to point D from the book that we are going through.
D. Thus, the purpose of dawah is to lead mankind to Quran, which in turn leads it out of darkness into light, which we have revealed unto you to lead mankind out of darkness into light.
Jazakallah khair. So the purpose of dawah is to lead mankind to the Quran, and this is the reason that we go out and talk to people. We want to lead people to reading and investigating the textbook that will give them life. Often people, when they buy a new vehicle, or they buy a new laptop or a mobile phone or whatever gadget, they never read the instruction manual. The only time they read the instruction manual is when it breaks. And then they go, oh, why didn't I read the instruction manual? Is this product guaranteed? Isn't it guaranteed? What is insured? What's not insured? That's the only time they look at the instruction manual. We see that in this section that we're looking at now in this book, it says that the purpose of dawah is to lead mankind to the Quran, to reading and understanding and focusing on what the Quran says, because the Quran in turn leads you out of darkness into the light. It will expose those areas in our lives that need to be changed. Remember what I said, that when you call someone to Islam, maybe they're smoking, maybe they're eating pork, maybe they're drinking even. The way they will stop doing that is when they start to read the Quran, because the Quran will be the light that will expose those issues to them. Your job is to call them to Islam. The rest is in the hands of Allah. Slowly but surely you will see the things falling away if they are sincerely following Allah. By themselves, they will start to readdress their issues. I remember when I reverted to Islam, that I had 2 Medina graduate scholars that were there to help me. And I often asked them years later, why didn't you tell me to stop doing this? Or why didn't you tell me? They said, no, that was not their job. Their job is to be there when I want to ask for help. And their job was to make sure that I was not going too far to the left or to the right, to stay on the middle path where I was supposed to be. And slowly but surely, as the things peeled away, then they were saying, alhamdulillah, you know, you're succeeding. So this is our duty, is to call and not to play the job of God. Not to try to think that we know the will of Allah. Our job is simply to convey the message and allow Allah to do the rest in people's lives. And this is where you see a life transformed. When you see that light coming on inside that person. When you see them starting to get the meaning of what Islam is all about. It doesn't just become a religion, it becomes a belief system. It becomes their religion. It becomes their whole being. Everything they want out of life is encapsulated in Islam. So they don't become a Muslim with these group of people and then they're something else with another group of people. They are 24-hour Muslims. Now, talking about the goths again, you know, the alternate kids, the ones with all the piercings and the funny hairstyles and the black clothing and the nail polish and all the rest of it. I read the one chap once and I said, do you dress like this all the time? He said, no, I'm a weekend goth. Which means he only got that makeup on and all that on the weekend. The rest of the time he was a bank manager. So he would never have known. We're not weekend Muslims. We are 24 hours, 7-day-a-week Muslims. You can't divide the two. You have to make a decision in life. What is it going to be? Some of us, it's difficult to do that. Maybe we're still young as Muslims. It'll come later. Don't put that pressure onto people. Allah will work with them, encourage them, help them to become more full-time Muslims. Maybe instead of just having a temporary Muslim job, they'll be permanently as Muslims in their life. So you have to help them, guide them slowly. So the purpose of the dawah that we are doing is to lead people to Allah. Well, they're going to find out who Allah is. Where? From the Quran. We're not going to take them to other texts at this point. They need to listen directly to what the Quran is teaching. So we don't want to introduce them to too much. I remember when my brother reverted to Islam, the funniest thing, now that I look back at it. When he reverted, he came walking down the passageway. I hadn't reverted yet. He had reverted before me, like a half an hour before. And if you don't know my story, you'll have to go and watch it somewhere, YouTube or whatever. And he came walking down the corridor with this big handful of books. The guys thought they were doing him a favor. They gave him Bukhari and they gave him hadiths and how to do this and that, all these textbooks. And he had this big smile. I don't know if it was a smile like, what am I supposed to do with all these books? I don't know what. It could have been a smile. I choose to say it was a smile. But I think it was more like, I've never read a book in my life yet. So now I've got to read all these things. Because he was 16 years old. He was young. I don't think he's ever read a book, you know what I mean, at that point, like a full book, unless it was forced upon him. And so he's got all these books. Now that I look back, I think the craziest thing to do. Give one book at a time. This is the solution for dawah. Just give one textbook. You know when you got your next door neighbor or your friend who shows interest in Islam, and you go to your library and you just start pulling out books, and you put them in bags, and you got CDs and DVDs and T-shirts and caps and everything for them. It's like, you know, you're like a salesman. You want to give them everything, you know, free trial. Don't do that. Why? I know it's tempting. Even I do it. Like, I have someone who comes and he shows interest, and I get a little bag out and I start packing it up with all these books and CDs and DVDs and lectures. And I walk and I go, but this is not going to work. It's too much. You know, it's just too much. He's not going to get it. Then I'll end up walking out with one CD or one DVD. Because you just want to give them enough so they come back for more. So once they've watched the DVD, they go, that was good. I've got a 7-day Adventist friend in South Africa. He runs a pet shop, or he works at a pet shop. I have an affinity to pet shops because I became a Muslim through a pet shop. So, the Adventist. And there's this one DVD I gave him, and he says, that scholar, if I met him in real life, I'd become a Muslim. He wants to see this scholar. So obviously, what am I going to do? All I'm going to do is flog that scholar's books and CDs and DVDs to this guy, because that's the ticket in. So we have sometimes it's just got to use a little bit more wisdom in what we give. Don't overburden the person. Give them what they require. What do they require first and foremost? If they're ready to accept Islam and they're showing lots of interest, you use a little bit of bait. So you use the books like, hey, understand the simplicity of Islam, things like that. But once they've shown interest, you need to give them a Quran. You need to give them a copy of the Quran. Every month, I give her about 1,000 Qurans. Every month. It's a lot of Qurans. To me, it's the most important thing that I must give out. Before anything else. So we give it in English, no Arabic or anything, in just the English. Or the French, or the German, or the Italian, whatever language they want, or the Russian. Give it to them in their language so they can get an overview of what this text says. Because you're introducing them to Allah. Now they need to find out what Allah's message is for them. And so we see that the purpose of Dawah is to bring people to the Quran. And the Quran will lead them by itself out of darkness into light, inshallah, with the guidance of Allah. Chapter 14, verse 1, it says it will lead mankind out of darkness into light. And this is the purpose of our Dawah. Our purpose is to help people to get to safety. As we said last week, we spoke about the lamp. And this is the beautiful terminologies that you see in Islam. You see, when we think of it in a human way, we would want to make it more sophisticated, the way we say it. We would have said, and it's to lead you out of the philosophical debates that you are caught in and help you find the fundamentals of, we may want to make things so intelligent when we speak. And when Allah is speaking to mankind, how does He speak? He makes it so that a 2-year-old will understand what He's saying. And the college professor who has got 5 PhDs will understand. It's a message from Allah. It's a message from the Almighty to mankind. It's written so that everyone will understand it. Immediately when you say, out of darkness to light, we get it. We get it. We understand what it means. No one has to come along and say, well, it actually means, there's none of that needed. It's a message from the Creator. When a text is written by a man, he doesn't write it like this. A man writes in a long story because he wants to show how clever he is. There's this classic example, if we look at the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the Bible, how each one tries to outplay the other one, how each one tries to outdo the other one. When Jesus came, He appeared to 10 people. This one says, no, it was 20. This one says, no, it was 500. Each one is trying to outdo the other one. It's natural tendencies. It's man, this is the way man is. We want to outdo the next. But we don't find this. We don't find this in Islam. We don't find the people trying to outdo each other, except, what do they try and outdo each other in? In good deeds. That's when there is competition. There's 2 times that you are allowed to push in line in Islam. One, which is the first time you're allowed to push in line in Islam, like force everyone out the way. There should be a race to get there. You know, I found in America, in Ohio, in a place called Mansfield, Ohio. You know who fills up the front line? It's the kids, the youth, 6, 8 years old, 12-year-olds. Front line is filled with the kids. They rush to get to the mosque. Most of the time in the rest of the world, who's in the front line? It's Papa and Opa and Grandpas and all in the front line there. Because time's running out, so they want to get to the front line for the rewards. Not in America. These kids are on the front line. I was so impressed. I said to them, well done. I was so proud of them. That's what we should be doing. We should be getting there half an hour early to get there, to make sure we're in the front line. Well, it's all the time we have for the program this week, so make sure you tune in again. Same place, same time with me, Areeb Islam. So from us all, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
مشفق متعطف لا ينتهي بالحصر ما أعطاه رب رحيم مشفق متعطف